Hey everyone, it's Alex here. If you're watching this because you're trying to decide whether a 17-inch mobile workstation is worth your money, you're in the right place. I've spent the last couple of weeks comparing a handful of high-end laptops that promise desktop-level power on the go, and I've also dug through a lot of buyer comments to see what actually matters after the box is opened. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's walk through the real-world experience with the Dell Precision 5750 and figure out if it fits your workflow or if you'd be better off looking elsewhere. First off, the biggest hesitation people have with a machine this size is the trade-off between screen real estate and portability. A 17.3-inch display is amazing for CAD, video editing, or any task where you need multiple windows side by side, but you suddenly find yourself juggling a laptop that weighs over 5 pounds and doesn't slip easily into a standard backpack. For me, that meant testing the Precision in 3 distinct environments: on a cramped airline seat, on a coffee shop table, and finally on a full-size desk at home. On the plane, the sheer size made it awkward to store in the seat pocket, but because the laptop's hinge stays firmly locked, I could still pull it open without worrying about it wobbling. In the coffee shop, the large screen gave me enough space to keep a Photoshop canvas open on one side while referencing a color palette on the other, something a 15-inch laptop would force me to toggle between. At my desk, the extra pixels translated into a noticeable decrease in scrolling fatigue during long design sessions. So, if you need that kind of visual breathing room, the size is an actual advantage. If you're constantly moving between meeting rooms, you might feel the weight more. Now, the heart of any workstation is its processor, and the 5750 ships with a 10th Gen Intel Core i7-10750H. In day-to-day use, things like compiling a moderate Unity project, running a 3D rendering preview, or juggling dozens of browser tabs, the CPU never seemed to hit a bottleneck. I ran a series of typical tasks: opening a 10 GB Photoshop file, exporting a 4K video clip, and running a basic simulation in Autodesk Fusion 360. Each of those operations completed within the time frame I'd expect from a high-end desktop processor, not a laptop that's meant for occasional heavy lifting. That said, the i7-10750H is still a 6-core chip, so if you routinely run heavily threaded workloads like multi-node render farms or large-scale machine learning models, you'll notice that the performance ceiling tops out sooner than on a workstation equipped with a Ryzen Threadripper or Xeon. In short, the processor is more than capable for most creative professionals, but power users who push the limits every day should consider a model with a higher core count. One practical strength that often gets glossed over in marketing copy is the thermal design. Dell equipped the Precision with an adaptive cooling system that shifts the fan speed based on workload. In my tests, light tasks like writing a report or checking email kept the fan barely audible. When I switched to a full raster graphics export, the fans ramped up, but they never became shrill, just a low hum that you can easily ignore in a shared space. This is a big plus because a laptop that screams at 30% load can be a distraction in a quiet studio or during a client call. On the flip side, the cooling system does mean the chassis runs a bit warm on the bottom under sustained heavy use. I placed a thermal pad underneath the laptop while rendering a 1080p animation for an hour, and the underside temperature hovered around 45 C. It didn't affect the performance, but it's something to be aware of if you often work on laps or in cramped spaces where heat might be uncomfortable. Battery life is another area where the reality diverges from the headline specs. Dell claims up to 12 hours, but that's under a very light workload. In real use mix of browsing, light Photoshop, and occasional video playback, I saw roughly 5 to 6 hours of runtime before the charger kicked in. If you plan to work unplugged for a full day, you'll need to either bring the charger along or accept the need for a power bank. However, many buyers of mobile workstations already anticipate being near a power outlet most of the day, whether that's an office desk or a studio, so this isn't a deal breaker for the target audience. Let's talk about expandability, because that's where the Precision really shows its value. The chassis includes 2 full-size MXM slots for adding an extra GPU, a second M.2 slot for additional SSD storage, and a full-size SD card reader. I installed a second 1TB NVMe drive to separate my project files from my operating system drive, and the process was straightforward: just a few screws and a hot swap. For anyone who expects to keep their laptop relevant for several years, the ability to upgrade storage or graphics without having to buy